Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final meeting of the PSTE Subcommittee. We're here to hear one budget, Alcohol, Cannabis, and Tobacco Commission, and joined by Samantha Tapia. Samantha, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, my name is Samantha Tapia with the Department of Legislative Services, presenting the fiscal 2025 operating budget analysis for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. Looking at the operating budget summary on page 1 and also in more detail on page 5, the fiscal 2025 budget increases 1.2 million or 11% over fiscal 2024 to 12.1 million. This is mostly from statewide cost allocations and 900,000 general funds to develop an online licensing system. We also note that a fund swap of approximately 2.8 million in special funds for reimbursable funds is included in the budget as a deficiency appropriation for fiscal 2024 to reflect the Memorandum of Understanding for collaborative work with the new Maryland Cannabis Administration, or MCA. Looking at an overview of the budget in Exhibit 1 on page 4, 63% or 7.7 million in accounts for personnel, 22% or 2.6 million on contractual services, 7% or 886,000 on rent and utilities, and the remaining 8% on supplies, statewide cost allocations, and other operational costs. Then looking at personnel on page 6. Moving into fiscal 2025, ATCC retains 22 of the new positions that were budgeted for fiscal 2024 before rearrangements were made for the formation of MCA per the Cannabis Reform Act. This includes 8 positions in the Executive Direction Subprogram and 14 positions in the Field Operations Bureau. The vacancy rate was 13.3% in last January, with 8 positions vacant at the turn of the year. This January, 13.3% with 8 positions vacant at the turn of the year, but ATCC has reported several new hires since that time. Then looking at key observations, starting on page 8, retail inspections, Exhibit 4 on page 8. In fiscal 2023, ATCC again exceeded their goals of inspecting at least 15% of licensed tobacco retailers and 9% of alcohol retailers, at 33% for tobacco and 22% for alcohol retailers. ATCC credits this to the addition of 11 new positions in fiscal 2023. Then looking at number of violations on page 9, with increased number of inspections came an increased number of violations found. Exhibit 5 on page 9 shows that while number of cigarette packs confiscated only marginally increased, other tobacco products confiscated increased 97% from fiscal 2022 to 2023. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows similarly the number of alcohol violations was 90 in fiscal 2023, which was an increase of 96% from the fiscal 2022 6-year high of 46 violations. Then briefly to discuss managing for results data for cannabis-related enforcement on page 10. ATCC did add a new measure for the number of cannabis inspections, for which there may be fiscal 2024 data in the fiscal 2026 MFR submission, but there are not yet measures for violations and confiscations. So we recommended adopting committee narrative requesting these new MFR measures be included in the fiscal 2026 MFR submission. But that is our only recommendation. Otherwise, we recommend concurring with the governor's allowance. With that, I'm happy to take questions or move to agency testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Thorough and efficient, as always. Questions for Samantha? Okay, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Cheryl. For the members of the subcommittee, for the record, my name is Jeff Kelly. I, if you're wondering, possess one of the best jobs in all of state government, and that is currently the executive director of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. And it is really a pleasure and an honor to have that job and to be here today. With me is Tom Akers. He's the director of our legislative and legal division, and Bill George is the director of our field operations division. So between the three of us, we hope we can answer any questions you might have. And I promise I won't belabor too long on this, but first I did want to give Samantha a big thanks, and also our DBM budget analyst a big thanks. This was our first year from beginning to end putting together our own budget, and helping us get through all of that requires it required a lot. Since we've existed since 2021, the comptroller's taking care of our budget. Last year we played a role, but the General Assembly helped, as I'll explain in just a moment. But really having Samantha and Ann both helping us and understand everything that was necessary, it's grateful. We're very grateful for that. So thank you. FY23 was an interesting year of change for us. We started off as the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission. You passed House Bill 1165, which was our fourth and final bill that migrated all of the tobacco and alcohol responsibilities from the Office of the Comptroller to the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, 1C at the time. And also in the earliest iteration of the the Cannabis Reform Act, the ATC was renamed to add cannabis in our title. So we're the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. And in doing that, the early iterations of the bill had the cannabis regulation function within our office. As the session moved along, decisions were made that perhaps it would be better to take the cannabis regulation element out of Alcohol and Tobacco and Cannabis Commission. So you created the Maryland Cannabis Administration. But you did expand our roles and responsibilities, and that is to largely take enforcement action against the pretty significant unlicensed cannabis market in the state. There's a lot of places that sell intoxicating cannabis or THC products, and that's one of our roles now. To support that act and to support our operations, General Assembly gave us 22 additional pins and gave us an FY23 appropriation for 3 of those pins. We were able to start the process of hiring 1 in a really short period of time, although none of them came on board before July 1st last year, but we did get them on board rather quickly after that. That was an AAG, a procurement specialist, and an HR officer. Having gotten procurement budget over the summer, procurement budget and our HR person in place was instrumental into us really being at a happy place right now regarding vacancies. Most of our positions were funded for 3-quarter years, so their funding wasn't available until October 1st. But we got everything lined up so that as soon as possible, once October 1st came along, we'd be able to start hiring. And with this staff we got, and the 22 new positions you gave us over the 2 years, 21 of those positions are filled today. And the last of those positions will be filled coinciding with pay cycle next week, on next Wednesday. And so I'm happy to say that we would be 100% staffed. We heard you last year and you made a mark with us. But sadly, one of our very deserving, but apparently disloyal employees decided to retire. And so we have another vacancy now that we're working on, but we have a list already provided. We're going to be getting interviews within the week, and we hope to have that position filled within just a couple of weeks, which again would take us back to 0 vacancies. 23 also brought something else for us with more staff, and we were already sharing cramped quarters with the Field Enforcement Bureau of the Comptroller's Office. We needed new space. So DGS got involved with us. They said it was a 12 to 18-month process to find new places, but we got lucky. And we found sufficient office space up in Baltimore, and it did 2 things for us. It gave us the office space necessary, and it gave us, it's kind of unique to us, room to store evidence, securely store evidence and contraband products. So we have it all in one complex in Baltimore City, and it's been just phenomenal for us. What was really nice is over the course of the summer, with all the positions we've hired and with the help of Samantha and Ann largely, we are an entirely self-sufficient agency. We don't rely on anybody for help now. Up until this year, somebody had to help us do something. This year is our first year that we are entirely on our own and operating. So again, we're grateful for that opportunity, and we're not gonna squander that. It means a lot we were able to do it. So last year, Samantha mentioned on our enforcement efforts, but we didn't stop on December 31st. We've continued. Just to give you a quick rundown of the progression we've made. In FY22 regarding alcohol inspections, we had 953 inspections. In FY23, 1,614, and year to date, 1123, but we still have 4 months left to go. We're going to go way past that number. I know. Tobacco inspections in 22 were 1,072. In 23 were 1,788 and 1,621 so far this fiscal year. And again, we're going to far exceed last year's numbers. And our cannabis inspections. Cannabis went live on July 1st. We started doing inspections immediately. And so far we've conducted 1,162 of these inspections. Cannabis is new. Our goal wasn't on July 2nd to go out and start hitting people like a hammer and saying, hey, you're in violation of the law now. What we did was we created an advisory that we published one through our list of subscribers, people who subscribe to us for roughly monthly updates that we send out. So we published a list out to them, and that's several thousand. And we also hand carried a copy of this advisory to every place we went to do an inspection. Now, finding places on spec's not as easy as it is with tobacco and alcohol because they don't possess a license. Actually, that's the issue. They're unlicensed. They're the unlicensed market. But we do find that a lot of our existing license holders, particularly tobacco license holders, are also selling these intoxicating THC products. So we've really looked in those places. And when we go there, whether we find something or not, but especially if we do, we serve to educate. We leave them with a copy of our advisory. We leave them with information that call us for more if they have any more questions. We let them know what the law is and that we will be back at some point to conduct further investigations to see if they have product there. But not too long after cannabis and THC went live, the Maryland Hemp Coalition filed suit against us in Washington County, and the circuit court judge there saw enough to issue an injunction, which essentially stops us from taking any enforcement action against this unlicensed market. Not all of it, just those that were in existence before July 1st, which are most of them, I'd have to say. But one thing it didn't do is it didn't say that it's okay to sell to underage consumers. So we are wrapping up a program internally to start conducting compliance checks at these locations to see if they're selling to underage consumers. And if so, we'll take the variety of enforcement action that's necessary. And we'll have that in operation by the end of this fiscal year or sooner. And once we have that process worked out, we'll engage the Maryland Cannabis Administration, who's already said they'd like to have us doing this with them, to check some of the licensed locations too, to make certain that they're not selling to anybody who's an underage consumer. And just very quickly, in FY24, we have asked for a deficiency. The deficiency is for one thing, and that is for our rent and utilities of our new location. When we submitted our 24 budget rather in 23, we didn't know we were moving. And that was a surprise and a surprise expense. So we went from having no rent to having rent. And so we're asking for roughly $840,000 for rent and for utilities. In FY25, with the exception of a very small area, we're not asking for anything. No additional staff, no space, we're good. We're just asking to maintain with one exception, and that is technology upgrades. And I'm going to walk you through why that's kind of important for us. We issue about 9,000 licenses and permits statewide throughout, every year. Some of them are renewals, many of them are renewals, some of them are new applicants, about 20% or so are new applicants. And we issue about 48,000 individual unique vehicle identification cards. Any commercial vehicle that transports alcohol in the state has to have a unique card, and we issue those. So it's a lot. We have 3 full-time people who do this pretty much year round. They're busy all the time. When we left the comptroller's office, we were moving toward a somewhat mechanized, automated, computer logical system for issuing these. When we left, we don't have access to that system anymore. So we, within a couple of months, have a new system developed, and it's a good system, but it's entirely manually driven. So if I can just walk you through the process for a moment of what happens. We get an application in the mail. It's got a check attached. We take the check off. We record the data. We fill out a deposit slip. At the end of every single day, we go to the bank and deposit these checks. Once the check is cleared, we go through the application to make sure that it's filled out completely, that all the required documentation is with it, and then we start to process it, which means we get to a computer screen and hand enter in every single line item. Nothing is automated. And then if the person, we conduct our different investigations. If the person's approved, we physically mail out or print out the certificate and then mail it out to the person. And renewals are the same process, except that we, in advance of everybody's expiration date, we send out a renewal notice just so our license holders don't forget. So that's one more step of something we do. Now, what that requires when we mail these things out quite often is we call everybody in from around the state. Everybody, agents, everybody we can get, we call them in, we sit around a bunch of tables and we start folding the papers and sticking them in envelopes and mailing them out. And these are good people and they're happy and they come in and help us out willingly, but it's really labor intensive. What we're hoping for, and the bulk of this money that we're asking for, the only additional money this year, will build out our system so that our licensing system will get better, a lot better. And it will interact with or interface with One Stop, Maryland's business licensing platform, where so an individual, anybody, will go in and start an account on One Stop. And then when they realize they're looking for a tobacco or alcohol type license, it will send them to our Salesforce program, which is the licensing program we currently have. And they'll enter in all the information. If they enter it in wrong, it'll stop them. So we won't have to review the applications for completeness and accuracy. they will be stopped along the way if it doesn't work. Once they enter in everything, our system's pretty automated at that point. Our turnaround ought to be pretty quick once we get our investigations and checks, which we'll always have to do, done. The turnaround should be rather quick. And the individuals can check online now. They've got their own account. They can go online, make their payment, check the status. And we hope that it will also, we expect it will also allow for some reporting requirements that they have to be able to report directly to us. So these 3 people who are handling 9,000 license and permits and 48,000 vehicle identification cards will monitor the system, keep the plate spinning, and we think can be more responsive to our citizens, our taxpayers, our businesses, and our license holders. So it's a pretty big task, and that bit of money will help us. 2 other areas we're hoping to upgrade in technology is, 1, our website. If you look at it today, it looks pretty good. I mean, we think it looks great. Our communications guy, who's played a large role in getting it together for us, is very disappointed with it. He says it's really in its infantile state. It's better than what we had, but it needs a lot of work, and he's working on that now. But we're asking for part of all of this extra money will be to build out our website and to make it just a better program. And then the last and smallest part is to get a case management system. We don't have one now. We used to have one somewhat. We don't have one at all now. So again, very labor intensive. This will allow us to complete reports in the field. All of our agents are out in the field. They don't come in to our headquarters every day. They're out in the field. They have the electronic technology capability. We just don't have the know-how. We don't have the software to be able to do that. So a case management system that will allow us to complete all of our work, will allow us to do some inventory of our property, our contraband and evidence that's stored, will allow us to share communications with other agencies when that's necessary to do as well. So that's kind of what that additional few dollars will do for us, is build out our licensing system, build out our website, and create a case management. And then lastly, regarding the MFR data that Samantha mentioned that we should start tracking, we do capture a lot of data regarding alcohol and tobacco and violations, and just a lot of information. And we have every intention of doing the same thing with cannabis as that data, we start to accrue that. The one drawback for us, starting with the fiscal year 26 recommendation, is it's hard to say what our enforcement data is going to look like, because we are handcuffed right now from doing the enforcement that the law would dictate. Since the hemp lawsuit is out, we still do our inspections. We identify places who have the intoxicating cannabis product. We leave them with our brochure with our advisory that we updated to outline what the lawsuit has done, and for them to stay aware of this lawsuit, because it could change at any point. Something changes and they're back to having to be compliant. So we're still doing our inspections, and we're going to be very happy to report out on that. But it's going to be, it's hard to say what the enforcement data is going to look like for a little while. We just don't know. And Madam Chair, thank you very much. That's our report, and our request, and happy to answer any questions. And and along the way, if there's something we can do to help any of you, please let us know. We want to be of service.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Your enthusiasm for your responsibilities for the state is infectious, and we greatly appreciate you and your entire team. You have one of the best teams, I think, in state government.
I thank you, and I do. I'm very fortunate.
And thank you for being creative with problems as they arise, particularly around hemp, and pivoting to controlling what you can control. Right. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I echo the I've seen on the last day of our hearings, such enthusiasm. So glad to have you here. Quick question for you, a couple of questions. Your schedule, how much has your compliance schedule changed since the new responsibilities, and does that mean you need additional partners? And lastly, speak to us about your training for your new role.
Thanks.
And for the folks that you brought on board.
Sure.
The continuous training that's going to be necessary.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So a lot of parts to that question. How our role has changed and how we're training. First thing we did was we brought in all of our agents, and let me just say the agents that we hired, who are the ones in the field who are doing the enforcement, are Maryland certified police officers. Overwhelmingly, they are, not entirely, which I'm happy to say, but overwhelmingly, they are retired officers from another agency. I mean, they were with another agency, and then when they found out they were getting hired from us, asked for enough time to be able to separate from service and join us. And so we have really experienced people who can hit the road day one and understand how to enforce laws. And so the training is really to target on what cannabis and intoxicating THC looks like, what that is. and really how to identify. And the other part, and it's really been a pretty simple move, I think, is to teach them how to regulate. We're not out here trying to hit everybody and put people out of business. By and large, our business, our license holders are good people, overwhelmingly. Sometimes they trip up. Our job is to help them comply and get back into the framework that they should be in. So we spend a lot of time on that. But in the early days, we brought the Maryland Cannabis Administration in to provide training, in-service type training, which all of our certified officers and agents have to go through every year. It's mandated. We made a big element of that to be, and even beyond just the required in-service training, is to learn about cannabis and to learn about THC from a completely different perspective. The perspective is that it is legal, and how do we handle this legal but necessarily regulated product. So that was a big part of that. MCA was, they really helped us get it down, because if you read the law, the bill was big. The bill was 100 pages long. There's a lot of parts to that. At the end of the day, we figured it out. We were able to very narrowly define intoxicating cannabis in from 0.5 and greater milligrams of THC intoxicating per serving, 2.5 per packaging intoxicating, no more than 10 milligrams per bag at a per item rather, and 100 milligrams per bag. So we figured this out pretty quickly because the MCA helped really drive that in to us. So that's it's ongoing training and whatnot. And I'm sorry, was there another part?
No, you're good. I mean, look, so at the end of the day, I know who your staff, who your team is, but for the record, I just wanted to make sure that this committee is aware, and others, that there is continuous training to ensure that everything is applicable to tomorrow. I mean, things change quickly. And when you bring these folks on board, you got to kind of change the mindset. You did mention that, we're not enforcing that way. You're seeking compliance.
Absolutely.
In another way. And I love the fact that you are committed to the in-service training for your folks each year. So no, you hit the points. Any additional partners you have out there, or you think, or you're anticipating having?
Yes, sir. And of course, MCA is a sister agency of sorts. So right. But regarding law enforcement, especially as we have developed our program for the underage consumer, the underage purchaser, that's not one of our partners, but all of our partners many of them will be either local departments of health, but even more so probably local sheriffs and police departments. We are hoping, especially those that have some kind of a cadet program, may be able to lend us their cadets and partner with us as we do these underage things. Number one, safety. So we want to make sure we have people who understand what they're being asked to do. They understand kind of how to do it, and that everything's going to be about safety. We're able to go in, do these inspections or attempts to make purchases in a very safe manner, and then withdraw from that. But we've already started with some of the local jurisdictions who have these programs, and that's where we're going to start. And they continue to be. I mean, even in our other world regarding alcohol, somewhat. Absolutely. And we're with all the local liquor boards regarding alcohol, but even the tobacco importation, the police jurisdictions that especially touch Virginia, are really aware. We've done a lot of training with them over the years and continue to do that on what contraband product is, how it comes into the state, how interdiction works. And so they've been great partners. And it's not just the border states, thinking MSP, thinking Transportation Authority of all people. Absolutely. when they're doing people along the toll facility areas. They've got great eyes for problems, and so they've been great partners as well.
I appreciate that. It's a great team, by the way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The one thing that I was going to add was, when you talk about partnership, one of the first things that we did was we created an outreach initiative to all of the jurisdictions around the state. And so we began to have conversations with county executives, with law enforcement, with state's attorneys in every jurisdiction around the state to tell them, hey, this law just passed. Here are the issues. This is what the MCA does. This is what the ATCC does. Here are our points of contact within your jurisdiction, within the ATCC, that you should contact when we are conducting these investigations. So we went over deconfliction, went over how we would charge things. And so it sets up relationships with really the key players in all of the counties to ensure that when we start to move forward with these charges, whether it's once we get guidance from the lawsuit out of Washington County, or to Director Kelly's point, when we move forward with these underage cannabis enforcement matters, we already have a pathway to succeed because we've created those relationships with the local jurisdictions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great plan. That was huge, actually. So thank you for that. That was a real big deal because we've been to 21 jurisdictions
Nice.
And done that exactly. Once we figured out how to do enforcement, we went to them to tell them what their roles were, inform what their roles were. Thank you for, I'm glad you brought that up. That was big.
Great. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And Director Kelly, we've had this chat in my office, but I also would just reiterate the epidemic of underage juuling in particular in our schools. And I know that your team takes it very seriously. If you could think about what else, other tools that you may need from this General Assembly to really get at the heart of that, somehow, despite it being illegal to sell under 21, they're everywhere in our schools, whether it's online, and I assume that you do have capacity to go after bad actors who sell online to underage.
We do sort of.
Okay.
I mean, in conjunction with the Attorney General's
Okay.
office, and that's what we've done in the past with cigarettes when they were selling mail
Yeah.
order. With the AG's office, we were able to stem a lot
Okay.
of that.
Okay.
And we're going to do more this year. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
because there are so many of the electronic smoking, there's a couple of the bills in this year
Mhm.
that are pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And when that settles and we figure out how to apply that, we'll either be in a better position next year of what we might need or be able to report back some success, I hope.
Okay. I appreciate that.
And we can probably take our underage, if it works for us with cannabis, I don't know why we wouldn't be able to. I'll take one of those THC products and can I have the smoking device there, please?
Exactly.
And we do have ability to act against that license.
Okay.
In fact, if I might, just very quickly, last year we did, I think, 13 hearings for violations against the license itself, the
Mhm.
license holder committing the license holder either committing or not working hard enough to stop some of these sales to underage consumers. But this year so far, Tom and his team have done 48 of these hearings.
Okay.
And so we hear you and we
Yeah.
really look toward that, and we might be able to expand our underage purchasing program.
And forgive me, is that currently being reported as an MFR?
No.
Would you be object?
We report it, but not as part of an MFR, and I'll tell you
Okay.
why. But all of those, almost all of those are derived by local law enforcement, even more so the
Okay.
departments of health.
Okay.
Because it starts with really the departments of health and then they send in a request. So we don't get even every violation that
Mhm.
we do get notice of violations that they report.
Mhm.
And we publish a report on that every year. But as far as that hearing, that's initiated by that local Department of Health
Okay.
most times. So it'd be difficult.
Yeah, understood. It's just something I think, to your point, it's going to require greater coordination and
Right.
a real aggressive stance here to get after the bad actors and make sure folks know that this is just not acceptable.
Absolutely.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you. And because it's our last hearing, you have the honor of me gaveling out for the year. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.